Hello, wise soul. If you're here, you're probably grieving. You're probably doing way more than any one person should have to do right now. You're probably raising kids or grandkids or holding everything together after a major loss. And somewhere inside of all of that, there's a quiet part of you that hasn't been fully recognized. And that part remembers touch, it remembers closeness, and it wants to feel that again. And it wants to feel love again. It is wondering, could there be new love one day? And then right next to those feelings of longing and hope, there's this feeling of shame. So today I want to talk about that intersection, sort of the shame and the widow's fire for grieving moms and dads who may someday want a new partner. And today they feel judged by their own body, by their community, maybe their beliefs. So we'll briefly cover how shame shows up around widow's fire, what shame does in the body and brain, and then I'll guide you through one somatic practice to kind of cool and loosen up shame's grip on you. And one simple reflective ritual to hi, I'm Patience McGrain, and this is Patience in the Morning, where I walk with widows through grief in a world that keeps moving. So widow's fire was covered in a former episode, and widow's fire is that intense, sometimes overwhelming desire for intimacy or just being wanted after a partner dies. Sometimes it looks like these late night urges to text someone, to call someone, to invite them over, to just feel seen. Sometimes it's fantasies about being held, kissed, or touched by someone other than our late spouse. And sometimes it is about our late spouse. Sometimes it's a strong hope that one day there could be another partner who loves us and our children. And then almost immediately, there's these feelings and thoughts of shame, such as, if I really love my late spouse, I wouldn't feel this way. And gosh, what kind of person am I to think about sex when my late partner just died a few months ago, a year ago, whatnot? If my community, my church, they knew, if my friends knew, what would they think of me? And if I find new love, does that mean I'm betraying my former partner? So, shame says things like, you are bad, you are unworthy, you are wrong. And, that's a really heavy thing to be carrying after loss. So if you're like me, I was wondering, well, what fuels shame? Secrecy, silence, and judgment. Yes, 3 things fuel them. I recently read Brené Brown's older book, Men, Women, and Unworthiness. And in this book, she talks about the 3 big ingredients that shame needs to stay alive. So it's secrecy, that's hiding the part of our story we're afraid others will reject. It's silence, keeping it all to ourselves and never kindly acknowledging or speaking or just sharing our real feelings or what happened to us or what's happening to us. And definitely not within anyone we value. And then there's judgment. There's that harsh inner critic, that internal voice that is saying things like, we shouldn't feel this way. What are you doing? We're bad. When widow's fire meets those 3 ingredients, it can show up in our lives like this. So we keep our late night urges hidden from anyone. We never tell anyone we're curious about future love because we're really scared they'll see it's too soon. And like if we told them that we were dating, we're really scared they're going to judge us. And then it shows up by us judging our own selves, our own body, every time our body remembers and feels desire. So shame thrives big time in that darkness. And according to Brené Brown, shame loosens its power over us when it is met with empathy, connection, and truth-telling. So we have to be honest. And this means that honestly sharing with someone who can hear our story and say, yeah, me too. I feel you, right? I still see you And you're not alone and you're not ruined. I want to briefly share shame and grief in the body. So you don't need to remember the science of shame. What I want you to do is observe the way that it shows up. So when shame hits, especially shame about something as tender as, desire after a partner has died, it activates the same stress systems that trauma does. Yes, it is doing the same thing trauma does. So your heart rate can rise, your stomach can clench, you can feel sick, your chest can get really tight. Your face, your neck, your body might get flushed with heat. You might want to just run and hide and just disappear and just check out. But you might even want to lash out with anger. So, biologically speaking, shame pulls our nervous systems into a state of danger. So, the brain reads shame as a social threat. And what's happening inside is if they knew this, they would leave me or judge me. So that can feel almost as intense as physical danger when we feel that we will be exiled. So grief has already caused the body to produce stress hormones and to experience emotional pain. So when shame is introduced here due to the widow's fire, the body ends up being even more overloaded. And this can result in just like a lot of emotions, tearfulness, numbness, anger, insomnia, confusion, and at times just this tendency to reach for things such as sex and substances or overdoing things, busyness to escape for a while. This is important. Okay. It is important because what I want you to know is that we're not weak for feeling overwhelmed. We're not weak for having our bodies respond to loss and threat the way that bodies do. It's very natural. So the goal is not to push our feelings away or try to stop our feelings from showing up. Instead, we want to meet our feelings with kindness and just gentle attention. Just offer them somewhere safe to land. Just be with the feelings, free of judgment. Just sit with them and then recognize I am grieving. I am having a difficult time in my life. Now, I invite you to try a short somatic practice. And this is something we can use when shame and widow's fire show up. So it's pretty simple. You can do it in your bed, the car, just a quiet room. The first step is, find a comfortable spot for yourself. And then place one hand over your heart and the other one over your belly. And it can be the lower or upper. And if it feels too much to put your hands in this area, you could choose to let them rest on the tops of your upper legs. Now that you're here, I want you could close your eyes or keep them open. Just start to notice the sensation in your body. Notice how it feels and maybe notice how shame feels. You might have to tap into a memory, recalling a recent instance in which shame appeared. And concerning the desire about, what you want, about future love. Just how did that feel? Where did you feel it? Be curious and kind. Maybe you felt it in the throat or the chest. Was there knots in your stomach maybe? Or did you feel it in your face, your neck? Where does shame show up? We're simply observing. We're not trying to change or fix anything. And now that you've identified that, I invite you to take a very kind breath in through your nose. Just imagine that you're smelling something very neutral. And then exhale slowly out of the mouth like you're sighing. Let's repeat that. Breathing in and breathing out. Breathing in and breathing out. One last breath. Breathing in and breathing out. Now, keeping your hands here and maybe your eyes closed, let's kind of get curious and ask yourself. Let's ask some questions, some factual questions. What shoulds am I hearing? What expectations around widowhood do I have? What do I believe about sex and grief? Now speak to yourself really kindly, keeping those hands where they are if you're all right with that. And silently say, or you could speak it out loud if you're in a place that you can do that. So feeling the way that I feel does not make me a bad person or a bad parent. Feeling this does not delete my love. This is my grief and my humanness showing up. Let the words land like a refreshing splash of cool water on a hot day. Remember, you're not asking your feelings to vanish. No, we're asking feelings to kind of show us a little bit more. We're acknowledging and saying to our body, I'm here with you. I'm on your side. And I'm going to embrace you even when you're hurting. So it's time for a brief ritual. This ritual will help bring shame into light. Brené Brown's antidotes to shame involve self-awareness, truth, empathy, and shared story. So you don't have to post your deepest secrets on social media or publicly in any way, but we're going to start with something very small. So here's a simple reflective ritual. You can do this once a day, once a week. So the first part is to write down a secret. It's a secret sentence. You can do it in a journal. You can do it on a single piece of paper, which is my preference because then you can tear that up and throw it away or burn it if you want. You could also kind of type it on a note, right? Or computer or the phone, right? So you could delete it if you need to. It doesn't mean you have to delete it. So what we're going to do is write down first. Here's what I want you to write. The part of my widow's fire story that I'm most afraid for anyone to know about is, and then honestly, just fill in the blanks. The part of my widow's fire story I'm most afraid for anyone to know about is. And then just be really frank with yourself and honest. Like nobody has to see this. Okay, so sometimes it's things like, I just want someone else to hold me. And I want to hold someone else. It's simple things like I'm curious about dating, even though I'm still crying and I really miss my late spouse. And maybe it's been a week, maybe it's been a year, maybe it's been 2 years or more. But sometimes we still feel a lot of shame over this yearning for someone else. So, and then, sometimes it's something like I'm afraid people will think I'm unfaithful or that I'm a disgrace if I ever love again. So don't edit. So don't doctor it up. Just write what comes to mind. Just write what comes out. Just let it come out. Enough. So you could pause this, okay? Because there's another step. So once you have that all written out, then I want you to take a moment to think about that you're writing a response to your friend. So it's your friend that you care deeply about that wrote that. And now you're going to respond back. Okay. A compassionate response is what we're looking for. So I want you to stop and think, if my best friend told me this or wrote me this letter, I would say or write back what? Let your voice kind of answer, let your heart answer, right? So you might respond if you're drawing blanks, something like, you're not disgusting or unworthy. You're human. Of course you're curious about love. You loved deeply. You loved deeply and your heart remembers that. Wanting a new partner to share your future with doesn't delete your past love. What it means is your broken heart is capable of loving and shining again. Then there's another part. You might pause if you want. Okay. So if it's safe for you, you're going to consider sharing at least one small part of what you've written out with someone that you trust. Okay. It could be a therapist, a grief coach, a close friend, or in your grief support group. So if you're like not sure where to begin or who to reach out to, you could start by searching online for some therapists or coaches who specialize in grief and loss, or for a local or virtual grief support group. Maybe look for one for widows or for grieving parents with children. So you could also ask your primary care provider, or yeah, I see these things even at the physical therapist, but you could also your local place of worship. And even if you don't worship there, you could go to your local place of worship and ask them for some recommendations for some grief specialist. So remember that the right support exists, it's out there, and that we deserve to feel helped and we deserve to feel understood. So when you go out and reach for help, you might say something like, there's a part of my story I haven't said out loud. I'm scared to talk about how grief and desire show up in my life simultaneously. So noticing, how it feels to be met and to be understood by someone else and not judged. It's quite a relief. Shame releases its grip on us every time we choose to recognize shame for what it is. So when you feel it, name it, it's shame. When we take time to question the reality, right? Is this true? And then also when we share what we're feeling with someone who gets us or just gets what we're going through and is empathetic. Remember that safe and kind connections, they help us remember, they help us believe that, we can tell the truth about what's happening. We can tell the truth about how we feel. We can tell the truth about, what we did or what we're thinking about doing. Even if we didn't do it, there's shame, but we can tell and still belong. We may want love again someday. We may want partnership. We may want the companionship, the intimacy, and just someone to walk beside us and our kids. Shame often tells us, we're not worthy of love. We don't belong. Hoping for future love is betrayal. Here's what Wisdom from Grief says. Loving again does not erase the past, does not erase the past love. Past love walks beside us. It's a part of us. When we embrace grief, we create another layer to a heart that already knows what it means to be cherished. We're allowed to continue loving the person who died. We're allowed to want safety, healing, time, and discernment. We're allowed to wonder about, to pray about, or just imagine the possibility of future love. We're allowed to take things very slowly, to grieve and be patient and kind with ourselves. And we're allowed to practice boundaries and safety, not because our desire is bad, but because we, our children, and our future are precious. So setting boundaries might look like having age-appropriate, gentle talks with our children and our teenagers. So about the changes in our family, or letting them know it is okay for all of us to have like really big feelings and that they're going to come and they're going to go. And it's okay for us to talk about it, even if they passed. It's for ourselves, it could mean carving out moments of self-care. So something simple like a weekly relaxing bath ritual, a walk, or just some set time alone so we can tend to our needs, can tend to our emotions. We can also set boundaries with the extended family or friends by letting them know what conversations feel supportive. So which ones don't feel supportive. And then remember, boundaries help us protect us, help us protect our children, help us protect our healing and our hopes and dreams, for the future. Remember, wise soul, you matter more than you know right now. In closing, shame and widow's fire are often uneasy companions. They make our nights feel confusing and full of judgment and longing. We are not alone in this. Our bodies are not our enemies. Our desire does not make us bad. In fact, desire helps us feel alive because we're still alive. Our hope for future love does not diminish our love for our late partner. Remember, we are grieving, and our nervous systems, hearts, and our stories are trying to understand a big life change we never expected would happen to us. Our partner died, and that is significant. It is one of the most overwhelming, stressful, and painful events in a human being's life. If all we do today is kind of place a hand on our heart and take 3 soft breaths and whisper to ourselves, I am allowed to feel this without berating myself. I am worthy of love. I am worthy of belonging. So this is a powerful and mindful first step to releasing shame. And in time, maybe you choose to seek support, some professional support. Maybe you talk to a trustworthy person who understands grief, trauma, and the complicated mix of desire and parenting. And just know that you are worthy of being met with empathy and not judgment. And another reminder is that, it's normal for shame or difficult feelings, the same ones, to show up again and again. Sometimes they look a little different, but it's the same feelings, especially after the death of a loved one and, the death of our partner, someone we were kind of attached to and was a huge part of our identity. Healing, it's not a straight line. It's okay to revisit these practices, this ritual that we had today, going through the antidotes to shame. So each time you return to those tools that we went over, or reach for support, you are choosing compassion for yourself. You are choosing to free yourself a little bit more from shame. And remember too, so we don't do shame alone. We don't have to do widow's fire alone either. Remember that secrecy, silence, and judgment are what feed shame. Shame needs those to thrive. So when shame and widow's fire show up, going to scan the body, notice how we're feeling, say out loud, I am grieving. Take 3 gentle breaths. Fact check. Is what I'm feeling, is what I'm thinking, or the judgments, is it true? Fact check. Then reach out to one kind, trustworthy person who can handle our grief and who can handle our story with reverence. And then share our story, the widow's fire and the shame. Just share it safely and clearly. And that's why soul is how we cool the shame and the fire when we're grieving. May you remember that you are worthy of love. You are worthy of the hopes and dreams you have. You are worthy of empathy and compassion, and you are worthy of belonging. Don't forget that. So thank you for joining me. Thank you for watching. Please like, subscribe, or share this with someone who could benefit. May you go with love.